Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I think I have come on this later than I had scheduled this, so apologies if any of you guys were waiting from before. I think as far as I remember, I scheduled for 4:30, but I may be wrong. So inshallah, everyone's well and all things are good, inshallah. So we're going to do a quick Q&A. Wa alaikum salam, Fahima, Ali. Hope you guys are all good, inshallah. So we're going to do a quick Q&A. Wa alaikum salam, Hassan. And it's been a while since we've done another live. I'm going to try to get Dawah Digital on as well if we can, a bit later on, inshallah. So as per usual, if you guys have any questions, more than welcome to ask. It's going to be a direct Q&A, inshallah. And yeah, so feel free to put in your questions, inshallah. Let me see if I can get brother Mohsin Patel on this live. Okay. Wa alaikum salam, Qazi. Okay, so first question is by Ray. The first question is about the Dajjal. Is the Dajjal system a system or a person? Both. Dajjal is a person. Is a being. You can say individual. Whatever the nature of this creature, Allah knows best, but is a person, is a being, is an individual. But that's not to say that there isn't a system in place as well. Because look, the word Dajjal comes from Dajala, which it signifies deception. It signifies the covering of the truth. Distorting reality, making appear making truth appear as if it's falsehood and falsehood appear as if it's true. Now this can apply to a system as well. It's interesting, lexically, the word itself signifies, one of the meanings is, it was used to refer to when a camel in the desert would have a wound, and what the Arabs of old would do, they would patch or cover the wound with tar, pitch. And that covering of the reality of the camel's wound would be referred to as Dajjala as well. It's to cover, it's to conceal. So that can apply to the system as well. And there's many scholars, many writers, many researchers who have highlighted or spoken about the reality of Dajjal, and they've mentioned that there will be a person, but there will also be a system which precedes the coming of this individual, which will be set up to facilitate for this individual so that he can achieve what he is going to or want to achieve. And yeah, we definitely live in such times. We live in times of deception and confusion. So are these the times, before the advent of Dajjal? Maybe not. Allah knows best. We can only speculate about these things. But if we take a rational, intelligent guess, we're close to those times. Close to the times of the emergence of this being, I would say. And the systems are in place. The environment, the mood of the world that we live in is in place. So yeah, it's tough times, brothers and sisters. So yeah, that's how I see it, and Allah knows best. But I think the Dajjal itself is an individual. I'm not, I follow the orthodox opinion on this, that he's definitely a person, an individual that will come. But that's not to say that there isn't a system that would be in place or is in place. Hopefully that addresses that for you, bro, Ray. So Hassan says, brother, my question, when someone asks, Hassan says, my question is, when someone asks, there are so many religions, gods, how can you know Islam is the truth without studying all other religions? Now, this is something very common. Not many, but some people bring up, and they say, look, there's so many religions out there. There are so many systems, so many ways, so many beliefs about God. How could we know Islam is the truth if we haven't studied every single religion? I think that's an incorrect way of putting it. The correct way of putting such a proposition would be, how can you definitively say all the religions are wrong unless you studied all the religions. That would be a more correct way of looking at what they're trying to say. But we're not saying that. We're saying Islam is the truth. We're not saying that the truth or elements of the truth don't still exist in the world today. So for example, they may very well be remnants of the truth from God in other scriptures, that some people somewhere in the world that claim a religion may hold. It's not the preserved truth. It's not what it was when it was revealed, but it is nevertheless, it can be from God. And to study that, yeah, sure, you'll have to study specific religions and look into specific texts, etc. But to determine the truth of Islam is not contingent upon having studied every single other religion. Let's analyze the claim that the Muslims are making, that Islam is making, that this is the truth from God, and we can do that. You can look at the Quran. You have the source text. You have it preserved. This is something that's acknowledged by Muslim as well as non-Muslim, experts, historians of the Quran itself, and it's there for you. We have a really good book on this, The Eternal Challenge. If you guys haven't read it, definitely check that out, Hassan. You can pick it up on the ira.org website on the material section. It's called Eternal Challenge, The Eternal Challenge. Read that book and share that book with anyone that is looking into Islam. So that's what I would say. That it's not an argument against Islam just because one hasn't, and no one can, to be honest. No, even the experts on religious texts. I would be surprised if someone could find someone that studied every single religious text that exists on the face of this earth. And that's not necessary to come to the conclusion that Islam is the truth. Okay. Let's see. Ibn Nadir, I think that's he says. It says, "What are your future plans?" My personal future plans, I don't. It's just to continue, inshallah, working in the da'wah. How that pans out, I have some ideas and some, things that I would like to do. So currently, I'm working on a book that should, inshallah, be finished and published by the end of the year. It's on the second edit. So I received the second edit back from the editor last week. Now the ball's in my court. So it depends on how long it takes me now going through it again and adding anything I want to add, taking out anything I want to take out. And then once I've done that, there'll be a final review and then it'll be ready for publishing. So that's something I'm working on. We're doing a lot of work at IRA at the moment as well, as lockdown is over. So, dawah teams are getting active again. They're going out and giving dawah again, which is good. So we have like weekly missions that we go on across the UK, different regions, doing dawah training courses, setting up new teams, etc. So that's ongoing. I'm also working on my master's at the moment in Islamic studies. My second semester is about to begin, inshallah. So I've got a few things that are going on at the moment. Long term, it's probably, I haven't really given it much thought, but long term, one of the things that I think I really want to focus on and inshallah try to help facilitate is for the next generation of du'at, brothers and sisters, you guys, some of you guys, inshallah, who are going to be involved in the da'wah, to sort of really bring into view the importance of the Quran in our da'wah. I think to a degree that's missing amongst the du'at is the importance of referring to the Quran as far as one's own characteristics are concerned and mannerisms and the way of engagement, and also as far even when presenting Islam, presenting arguments. Mashallah, Hamza has done that as far as presenting Islam, as far as arguments are concerned in his book, The Divine Reality, in a brilliant way. But I think a lot more needs to be done as far as grounding du'at through the Quran, in the Quran. So that's something that I really think I probably will be focusing on in the future, inshallah. But so hopefully that addresses that for you, Ibn Nadir, inshallah. Let's see. And for some reason, this this StreamYard always jumps. I have this issue all the time. I go from one question and then it jumps like six, seven questions to the next one. So let me try to go back up. Okay, here we are. I don't get if you can rephrase this, Gulzar. Why is sex with maiden allowed in the Quran? Maybe if you rephrase it, then I can address it, inshallah. So PB9 had a question about the Prophet ﷺ marrying. Now, look, it's something we need to. If you can, PB9, if you tell me what the question is this true? Look, firstly, the Prophet ﷺ was married to many women. The Prophet ﷺ had many wives, definitely. That is a historical known fact. Now, if you have a specific question related to this, please do ask, and then I can address it, inshallah. So Fatima Ali asks, Fahima Ali asks, sorry, Fatima. Fahima Ali asks, how do you stay motivated to give dawah? I have high respect for you all, for everything you do. It's exhausting to get people to think at times. So motivation in the dawah is a big challenge for many people, brothers and sisters. Honestly, it's not easy. Sometimes we get involved in the dawah initially, and we're excited. We're young. We think, it's a buzz. Yeah, it's like everyone's excited about it. It was the case when I got involved. Many other brothers. It's something exciting initially, but when that initial excitement dies down and you start to really understand the weight of this work, then you have to really sort of figure out why you're doing it. Go back to the drawing board and figure out why you're doing it, what your reasons are, what your intentions are, and really get into grips with your why behind the dawah is gonna determine your longevity in the dawah. If you're doing it for superficial reasons, if you're doing it just because it was something you were excited about, that's gonna fade. So you have to really figure out your why. I think really sit down and think about that, because things are going to get tough. In the dawah and outside the dawah, life's going to happen. Things are going to happen, and life isn't supposed to be easy. The dawah is not supposed to be easy. It's the job of the prophets, and the prophets were the greatest human beings to have ever lived. And this work is the greatest work any human being can be involved in, whatever level Allah allows us to be involved in the work of dawah. It's a privilege, it's a blessing. And sometimes, in the dawah, you may realize that you may feel, because remember, everyone, our iman fluctuates from time to time. Our connection with Allah fluctuates. Self-development, something we're all supposed to be working on, is on working on ourselves. Sometimes that stalls. We have periods, maybe a month, 6 months, a year, where we're not really been working on ourselves. We've been our spiritual development is on a standstill. Maybe it's on a decline, and at times you're still involved in the dawah, and at that time it could be really burdensome. You can really feel the weight of still wanting to, having this responsibility, but you don't feel like you're up for it at times. And this can happen. I'm being very real with you guys, and something we need to know. It's not always easy. Whether you've been involved in dawah for 10 years, 15 years, 5 years, 1 year, you will get those times. And that's why it's really important to drill down on your why. Why are you involved in the dawah? Why do you want to continue this work? If your why is right, if your why is greater than your, it's based on something greater than your ego, that's what's going to lead you to continue even through the thick and thin. But if your why behind the dawah is based on something like it makes you feel good, it gives you an ego boost, it's not really going to last. It's important to really drill down on that. Give me a second, guys. I've got a very important call. I'm gonna mute and pause, and I'll come back to you guys. Sorry, guys, had to take that. Okay, so yeah, so hopefully, Fahima Ali, that helps, inshallah. As far as the motivation for dawah, get your why down, inshallah. Okay, bismillah. By the way, Dawah Digital, if you're still there, Mohsin, I've sent you the link in the comments. Just click on that, bro. You should be able to join, inshallah. There's some questions I want to ask you because there's some questions the brothers and sisters had on some topics which you may be able to advise them on better, inshallah. So, Bahat, I think that's how you say it. Apologies if I butchered your name. My question is, how do you balance deen and dunya? This is, again, something we all struggle with, but I think the first thing is to realize that Islam provides us with a beautiful balance between deen and dunya. So it's not that we have to figure this out for ourselves, which is good. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has is given us a deen, a way of life which incorporates dunya into it. Okay, so that's there for us. We just need to follow the guidelines, because we have to, sometimes we separate deen and dunya as if it's two separate things. But when we really understand what the definition of deen is, the deen meaning a way of life, not just a religion. And this is one of the biggest mistakes I think we've made, is that we have internalized the notion of Islam that we have in our minds is that it's a religion, right? And this is not necessarily the correct way of looking at it. The Islam as a deen is not just religion, because when you think of religion, we think of certain ritualistic practices. We think of that it's you have a set of beliefs, you have a set of practices, and that's it. That's not the correct way of looking at it. Islam is a deen meaning it's a way of life. Now, if it's a way of life, it therefore incorporates dunya into it. So don't separate them. See it as deen, okay? And with the correct understanding of the deen, you'll realize that the dunya is also incorporated. We have to function in this world. We have to live in this world. We have to do the things we do. And we just have to keep the guidelines that Allah has given us in regards to those things in mind. So as an example, you can make money. And Dawah Digital is here, mashallah. You can make money, right? You can make money in this world. But there are certain principles that you need to keep in mind. There are certain concepts, such as that the money shouldn't get to you to the degree that it leads you off track and you spend it in wrong ways, etc., etc. So just keep that in mind. The deen of Islam has given us a beautiful structure which incorporates dunya into it. And once we start to live by it, things will start to, inshallah, make sense from this perspective. So let me just add, Brother Mohsin. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Mohsin.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What have you got me into, Mr. Imran?
Nothing much yet. So brothers and sisters, by the way, now that Mohsin's joined us, I'm not sure how long he's here for. If you guys have any questions related to secret societies, the Jala, Freemasons, the Illuminati, Ya'juj and Ma'juj, Zulkarnain, this is the perfect time to ask these questions now. And I know that you guys have these questions, because every time I do a live, Mohsin, those questions always come up, bro.
Yeah, but Imran, what makes you think I have the answers, bro? This is like,
I'm not saying you got the answers. What my proposal is that you are someone that may be able to advise on these topics a bit better, inshallah. Not that you have the definitive answers. I'm not saying that, and I think that's the best way of looking at these things, isn't it, bro? Because a lot of these things are to do with the unseen or the future. We can simply speculate based on reason and the evidence at hand. Isn't that the case, bro?
True. How do I see the comments?
There should be. So if you're on your phone, are you on your phone?
Yeah.
There should be comments coming up on one of the sides, or one side of the phone, or you may have to press a button at the bottom where you have your tabs. Yeah, sideways should be easier. You may see them.
Yeah, I see. Oh, my question is how to balance deen and dunya. That's for you,
Imran. Yeah. I've tried to answer.
Maybe it's better if you just read the question out for me if there's one comes out.
Okay, I'll read them out for you, inshallah. I'll read them out for you. So, bro, there's loads of questions, mashallah. Let me just see if we can. Assalamu alaikum. I have a suggestion. Okay, let me just quickly read this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find those specific questions that I can get your thoughts on as well, bro. How long do you have, by the way?
About 10-15 minutes. I'm taking a break.
So here's a question about the study Quran. I'm going to quickly answer, inshallah. Is the study Quran reliable? It's there's things in the study Quran, brothers and sisters, which have a perennialist tinge to them. Okay, so but that being said, if you have your Aqidah in check, it's a brilliant resource for the English speaking audience as far as tafsir literature is concerned, especially classical tafsir literature is concerned. I refer to it time and again. It's brilliant. But don't approach it thinking everything in there is, correct. It's not designed for that purpose. It's a resource that you refer to whenever you're doing research and you're looking into certain topics. It's brilliant. It's got some amazing resources, but be careful at the same time. There are things in there that can be misleading. Okay, let's see. What are you smelling, Mohsin?
Just my collection. Do you want to see?
Yeah, why not? Show us your
I think you've seen some of these already, but there's more hiding in that gap there. There's some over here as well. These are the ones that you introduced me to. I think these are the ones from Maison Anthony Marmin, who used to be called Al Faransi.
Yep.
Remember that guy?
Yep. Okay, here's a question, Mohsin.
Right,
Donald Trump asks, are you sure that the Illuminati and Freemasons are doing something evil? How sure are you about that? Some people say that they are just some normal groups. Is there any proof of the evil things they did?
Define proof, I guess. I mean, look, you can measure the evidence yourself, and depending on what you consider to be proof, you should be able to get some sort of answers. Look, my study into all this stuff happened a long time ago, and the conclusion I've come up for myself is that the Freemasons used to be the Knights Templar, and they had to operate in secrecy, which is why they became the Freemasons. The Knights Templar, their mission was to take Jerusalem. So this is why the first Crusades happened, etc. And obviously, we know that the Crusades ultimately failed because Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, may Allah be pleased with him, may Allah have mercy on him, freed Jerusalem from the Crusader grip. The Knights Templar were then on the run away from the Roman Church, from the Vatican. So they had to operate in secrecy, which is where Freemason was born. I've been to the Grand Lodge of Freemasonry with you as well, Imran, and we've seen the symbology, we've seen what it alludes to, and their ultimate aim, in my opinion, and my opinion can be wrong, I believe I'm right, but I can be wrong, their ultimate aim was to retake Jerusalem, and that happened in 1948. So since then, their ultimate aim has been fulfilled. They've operated in secrecy for hundreds and hundreds of years. Now, if you look at what happened after 1948, you'll see that roughly in the 70s, at some point in the 1970s, they opened their door to everyone. So, look, come in, have a look around. Come into our lodges and have a look around. We've got nothing to hide. And why would they? Because they've achieved their aims. They can now operate openly, right? But there's also another thing as well. Another thing that a lot of people miss out, which is that if you look at the grading system, what you call the degree system in Freemasonry, the entry level is called the Blue Lodge, which is where people who have altruistic desires to save the world, etc., will join the Blue Lodge and work their way up the degrees up to 32nd. And what they'll find is that it's a great network. It's a big network of people who have good interests. And what's very interesting to know is that to be a Freemason, you have to believe in a deity, you have to believe in a god, right? So, and my belief is that the higher up you go in Freemasonry, past the 30th degree, etc., you're asked to do questionable things, and ultimately resulting in your kufr, your disbelief in God and your belief in Satan. So you switch sides, and the people who are higher up, because they believe that and I don't know, Allahu Alam, because I've not seen this myself in my own eyes, but this is what all the evidence sort of points towards, is that they are in contact with devils and demons, or what we call the jinn, the evil jinn, right? Or the shayateen, right? And they do deals with them, and they do their deals with them for whatever purpose they want, and this is ultimately where it leads. So if you want to be a part of a brotherhood, if you want to be part of a system which is fighting for the good of this dunya, join Islam. If you want to further yourself and your own desires, then there are plenty of systems out there, one of which is Freemasonry. And that's what I have to say. I
Inshallah,
don't know if that
yeah.
answered the question, but I don't even know what the question was anymore.
No,
It's
it's
kind of write
good.
it off, but yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
I remember about 4, 5, maybe longer, 5, 6 years ago, we were giving dawah in West Ealing, and this really interesting looking guy looked Arab, was walking by, and literally everything he was wearing had the Freemason symbology, the compass, the G, and he had the ring and everything, and he had the waistcoat with all of the patterns on it and stuff. And he came over and we started talking, and he said he said he's Muslim, and he said he was a Freemason. And at the time, I was quite shocked, because I was thinking, how can a Muslim be a Freemason? But then after that, it got me intrigued, and I started looking into it. That especially, and I think you mentioned it, which is that there's like there's secret societies within secret societies. So the people on the lower degrees are completely clueless as far as what happens up above. For them, it's just a case of it's something that's alluring. It's a group, it's a club where guys can get together. And one of the things they also promote initially, at least for the lower levels, is you can be of any religious affiliation, but you can be a Freemason as long as you don't come and discuss or fight or argue about these things within the circles. So yeah, it is interesting, bro. There's another question here, bro, for you, which I think you'll find interesting. What are the different interpretations of exegesis on the Quranic verses relating to the wall of Ya'juj and Ma'juj? Did you hear that? Oh, he's frozen. Mohsin, you there? Sorry, we're losing your signal.
Interpretations of exegetes on the Quranic verses relating to the wall of Ya'juj Ma'juj. Yeah, so I've read the question. So we know that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Is this better? You're frozen as well, Imran. I'm not sure what's happening.
It's the signal,
okay,
man.
So
it's
the 18th chapter of the Quran is Surah Al-Kahf, and from the 83rd ayah onwards, I think for about 17 ayat, it talks about the story of Zulkarnain. It starts off with the words وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِلْقَرْنَيْنِ قُلْ سَأَتْلُو عَلَيْكُم مِّنْهُ ذِكْرًا, which means they asked you, O Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they asked you about Zulkarnain. Tell us, say this to them, tell them that you inform them a part of his story. And then it mentions that he traveled 3 different journeys. The last of which it mentions is the journey to a place where the sun appears to set in a murky spring. Thereby he finds between 2 mountains a people who live in a valley who barely understood a word that Zulkarnain speaks. When they managed to communicate, these people say to Zulkarnain, Ya'juj and Ma'juj, in the English language that would be Gog and Magog, they are causing corruptions in the land. So build for us between us and them a wall, and we'll pay you something, right? And what Zulkarnain says is, what Allah has blessed me with is better than what you can give me, but lend me the strength of your men, and lend me and bring blocks or slabs of iron. Zubrul Hadid, Atuni Zubrul Hadid, right? So bring me blocks of iron. So this is actually a physical wall. So there's a lot of nonsense online that you'll see. Oh, the wall is not a real wall. It's a spiritual barrier or some other nonsense, right? But the Quran clearly states that this is a physical wall. That they plied the bellows, meaning that they blew once the iron had become hot. With the fire, they plied their bellows and they blew to make it hotter, and then they poured something like kitra on top, which is translated as either copper or brass or lead, right? So they poured these physical things on top of the iron. So this is actually a physical barrier. It's actually a real barrier. So as far as interpretations on the wall, I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, it was in my opinion, it was a physical barrier. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Maybe they're asking more related to the location?
There's there's a lot of disputes in terms of location. However, I think it was in the 9th century, it was Caliph Watik who he had a dream. This Caliph had a dream of the barrier, and it shook him a little bit. So he got this guy called Sallam al-Tarjumani, which means Sallam the interpreter. Apparently this guy was of Jewish origin, but he was under the rule of the Muslims. So it was, and he spoke over 30 languages. So Caliph Watik paid him a salary, gave him men and horses, and paid them a salary too, and said, go and locate the barrier and come back and tell me about it. So Salam al-Tarjumani embarks on this epic adventure. Ibn Qurdabi, a famous Muslim historian of the time, he records this story. So do some other Muslim historians. So you can find this information. And he goes on this epic adventure and he crosses different nations until he comes to a place called Derbent, which is in South Asia. Well, not South Asia as in like India, Pakistan, but more South Russia sort of thing, right? So we're talking about Dagestan. And he comes across this place called Derbent, and there the people say to him, oh, we know what you're looking for, we'll take you to it. So they take him to this place, and there he sees
what century is this?
This was in the 9th century.
Okay.
The 9th century CE. So we're talking about the year 200 or 300 Islamic calendar. Yeah. I can't be exactly certain what year it was because I haven't got my notes on me.
That's fine. I just wanted
centuries after.
Yeah, I just wanted you to give us a general sort of framework of the time.
Yeah, to get a time frame. Yeah. So the problem I have with this location is that they describe the barrier as a door. Right? That's what they call it, Daraband, like Darwaza Band, yeah? Daraband, yeah? So Darwaza Band in South Asian language means the door is closed, right? So that I had problem with because what Zulkarnain says, and goes, I'll do you one better than building a wall. I'll build you something that's an enclosure, which means something stronger than a wall, something that cannot be penetrated. You can't go over it, you can't go under it. This is what it says in the Quran. They couldn't climb over it, they couldn't go under it, and they couldn't pierce through it. It was a very strong barrier. So if something can be opened, you can go through it, which becomes problematic. But Allah knows best of the story. There are other locations, though, that dispute Derbent. So, for example, there's the Darial Gorge in the Caucasus Mountains, which is between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea, which is very interesting. There's also a couple of locations. There's a region of Asia, Greater Asia, where 4 different mountain regions meet up, and there are local legends there, which talk about there used to be a barrier here blocking off entry to the east, meaning going towards China, which is very interesting because in historical times, China wasn't as large as what it is today. Most of it was just grazing lands for goats and sheep and horses, and it was the Turanian and Scythian people, or what we know as Mongols and Eurasian people. They had nomadic tribes who would basically move across these lands. So they historically were also known as the scourge of the earth by Christians and Jews alike, and they referred to them as Gog and Magog. So there is a lot of evidence there.
Wait, so the Christians, are you saying the Christians and Jews will refer to these people as Gog and Magog?
Yeah. So it's in their scripture that they even had maps that they built up, made, and said that these are the wildlands. Do not trespass here, for beyond here are the land of Gog and Magog. What's even more interesting is when you look at the map of Alexander, Alexander the Macedonian or Alexander the Great, his model of Earth was a bit questionable, to say the least, because most of the planet Earth hadn't been discovered at that point. But if you look at his model of the Earth on the map and you try to place it to real places on the Earth today, it would also suggest that the barrier, because according to some legends, which are the Syriac legends of Alexander, that he was Zulkarnain. I don't believe that, but if they were true, it would also suggest that the lands that he built the barrier up against were also Greater Asia. So there's that. But when it comes to the barrier was a physical barrier, and I believe it has fallen. There's no other.
Okay, let me pause you there. Let me pause you there, Mohsin. At this point, I'm going to ask you now officially and publicly for you to make a pledge. I've been trying to get you to do this for a while, but we need to do a live stream specifically on this topic. Now, something I'm gonna let me put it this way. I'm going to preface this by saying whatever you're sharing your opinions, right, based on your research and stuff like this. But we need to understand when it comes to these topics, again, it's based on speculation, best guess, based on reasoning, the most rational conclusion, in best inference, if you like. That's what we could say. We're not talking in definitive terms, but I know you have a very interesting, based on your research, a very interesting conclusion in regards to, or view in regards to Ya'juj and Ma'juj, and and that history basically, and what's going on. And you've alluded to some of this already by saying that the barrier was in the past tense there. Well, I want you to go into this in a lot more detail in that live stream. And by the way, the view that you hold, Mohsin, and the reason I'm comfortable in discussing this, because at the end of the day, I want this all to link to the Dawah, right? At the end of the day, otherwise, for me, these topics, unless they have some sort of this utility from a Dawah perspective, it's pointless. Like, we can discuss these things till the cows come home, bro. And it's very interesting. We love talking about these topics, but if there's no tangible, positive impact, if you like, for a Muslim living in the world today, well, then I just don't see the relevance in discussing these things too much. But there is a important link that we can make there. So we do this live stream. Let's definitely do this next week so we can go into a lot more detail on these topics. And again, it's your opinion, your views based on the research that you've done. I personally, right now where I stand, I'm really convinced by much of what you say on these topics, and I agree with you on this. So I think. Currently, I hold the same view as you do on this stuff, on this topic. Because a lot of times, bro, when it comes to Ya'juj and Ma'juj, I think what's happened is we have, maybe this is not the right word, but I think we have sensationalized and romanticized the notion of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, right? To a degree. Meaning,
Absolutely,
when we think of
100%.
it, Ya'juj and Ma'juj,
Absolutely.
we see it as, these special beings that live under the earth.
I take it one step further. Like, we've also mythologized them as well.
Yes, yeah.
To the point where we start to believe that there might be things like reptilians or aliens, and some. If this is not the conventional Muslim understanding of who Ya'juj Ma'juj were, we believe that they are human beings. We don't go to explanations that require serious mind gymnastics to try and make sense of it, because it appeals to our sense of science fiction or something. We've got to be as rational as possible and as objective as possible. And this study itself is, when it comes to things like prophecy, the study itself is subjective. The prophecies are very objective. If Prophet ﷺ said something, it's the truth. There's no two ways about it. It's the truth. But a prophecy is something that, if you're trying to establish whether it's occurred, whether it has yet to occur, or whether it's occurring now, that process is subjective and only becomes objective once that thing that was supposed to happen has happened. Right, and we can objectively say, there's unanimous agreement that this thing has happened. Then that prophecy being fulfilled becomes objective, right? It's an objective understanding that it has happened. But the study that is subjective is necessary, because without that study, you will never be able to know whether something has occurred or not. So that study is necessary, it's necessitated. And I feel like a lot of people, they find it very hard to get their head around this. They say, why do you look into these things? They're not going to benefit you in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. And it is true, because if you're talking about, the end times, then understand this, that before the end of the world, you're going to die. You're going to die. So your own end should be more important to you than the end of the planet or the universe, XYZ. Your own end is what's going to be more important to you and your life in the hereafter than anything else. You're not going to be questioning about anyone else. You're not going to be questioning about these prophecies on their judgment. You're not going to be questioning about this stuff. You're learning about all this stuff. Why? Because you want to understand what point in history you're standing, and so that you can take your life more seriously. That's all it is. That's really what it is.
Because a lot of times, bro, I've seen people that really, get involved in the topic of the end times, and talk about the Jala, research on this topic, Ya'juj and Ma'juj, signs of the end times, all of this. It's almost like it's done superfluously, in a way where, okay, we're just doing it for the sake of doing it because it's enjoyable to research. I think it's important, like you mentioned, it's very important to
go into a rabbit hole.
Yeah, Yeah, I think it's important to sort of, it's number one, it's important to discuss and look into these topics, bro, because we live in interesting times, bro. We live in a time now where, you know, for the first time in history, the global mood is of godlessness, right? Which was never the case throughout history. We live in a time where God is deliberately pushed out of the picture. Materialism is promoted. You know, the YOLO mentality is promoted. It seems like, especially in the past couple of centuries, there's been a great shift in the way people are encouraged to think about life and reality. Now, why is this happening? How does this link to what we learn about the end times in the Islamic tradition? It's a very interesting topic, but we have to, or we should study these things from the perspective, number one, to know where we stand in history. And we need to know that so that we can proactively engage in the world that we live in, safeguard ourselves, do the right things, help others from a Dawah perspective. I think it's very, very important to discuss these things, bro. And that's the only reason I want to sort of delve into this in more detail with you. Otherwise, you know, I've had discussions with you. You know, I've looked into these things privately, but I've never actually said, you know what, let's do a live on this, or let's put this out, because I've never seen the practical benefit until now. Okay, now it's like, okay, there's a big onslaught, bro, a philosophical onslaught, sociological onslaught on the idea of religion, on the idea of God. It's been pulled out of people. You know, it's like it's not something that's encouraged. It's like people have been pushed towards materialism, atheism, naturalism, you know, all of these types of ideologies. Why is this happening? How do we counter this? I think all of this is linked, bro, and we need to explore these things a bit more. But again, not just for the sake of exploring these things, but for the sake of, okay, how do we now, understanding all of this, productively engage in the world that we live in? And I think that's key, bro. So definitely let's go into this in a lot more detail, bro, because, you know, and I really want to discuss this with you, because mashallah, you have spent many years
Inshallah.
researching. Why, by the way, why did you sort of get interested in these topics anyway?
It's very. It's funny because you said, we do this because we want to link it back to the Dawah. Well, in 2001 or 2002, I can't remember exactly, I think it was late 2001, I was on an internet forum called Religious Education Forums. I think the shortcut for it's called RE Forums now. And on there, I was reading a thread, and this thread shook my iman. Imagine this: it's 2001, 9/11's happened. It's the end of the year, and I've recently started taking Islam more seriously. I was about 26 years old at the time, right? So I started taking Islam more seriously, and I'm on this internet forum called Religious Education Forum, and this Christian and this atheist are talking about the Quran. And I thought, oh, this looks interesting. So I looked at this thread, and on there, the Christian is saying to the atheist, oh, you're not going to believe what these Muslims believe. They believe in a guy called Zulkarnain. You know what that means in English? And the atheist is like, no, what? So then the Christian says, it means the two-horned one, right? Now, you know what the two-horned one means, don't you? And the atheist says, yeah, that's the devil, right? And I was like, oh my God, is this really the Quran? And goes, that's what, nah, it can't be. You know, I didn't know, because I never looked at these verses before. And I was very new to understanding Islam, even though I was 26 years old.
Sorry, Mohsin, you're freezing up, bro. Just give it a second. We can't hear you. So, guys, I don't know if you guys can hear me or hear Mohsin. Please let us know, inshallah, because Mohsin's frozen on my screen.
I grew up in a. Hello, you gone?
Yeah, sorry, bro, we lost you. Okay, Mohsin, do one thing, bro. Go back out and come back on the live, please. Okay, cool. So you guys can hear me, alhamdulillah. So let me remove him, and inshallah we'll wait till he comes back on. Until then, I'm just gonna inshallah go through, see if there's any other questions that we've missed. So like I said, guys, you know, this is a very interesting topic, and I think it's extremely significant for Muslims today, so that we can really understand the times we live in. And on top of this, therefore act in productive ways and do what we can as far as the dawah is concerned, inshallah. So let's see. What happened to the series with Sheikh Fahd, the Quran series? We stopped that. We had a break and we didn't get back around to doing it. So I'll definitely touch base with Sheikh Fahd again and see if we can restart that, inshallah. Okay. So, okay. Understand sanctity of the holy place, etc. Okay. Just want to create a life. Existence. Okay, so this is a good question. Let me just message Mohsin, see if he's coming back on. No, we'll address this. So while Mohsin comes back, if he comes back, inshallah, Muhammad asked the question, if someone has doubts in Islam or in the existence of Allah, will he be a disbeliever? Kindly answer me. Look, doubts don't, or questions about Islam don't take you out of the fold of Islam, right? It's, if you have, everyone has questions. Every Muslim has questions. Whenever we have questions, try to seek out the answers. But don't let those, don't do two things. Don't relabel a question as a doubt, right? Because a lot of times we do this. Sometimes, in most cases, we just have questions, right? We have questions about Islam or about things in Islam, and we very quickly label them as doubts. Don't do that, firstly. Secondly, make a note of the question that you have about Islam and try to find the answer. But, you know, this is why, look, this is the foundation. When you understand Allah exists, and you believe in Allah, and you have reasons for belief in God, and you look through those, that's it. From that point, that's the foundation. Now, later on, say 6 months down the line or a year down the line, you have a question that comes to mind, you know, about something. That question doesn't or shouldn't affect your belief in Islam. Because when we have questions because we have a lack of understanding about a certain topic. And every single one of us has a lack of understanding about maybe many topics in Islam. So look for the answers, you know, and that's a lifelong journey. Don't turn a question into something bigger than it is. It's just a piece of advice for everyone, because a lot of times I've seen this with brothers and sisters. They have a question about Islam that comes to mind, and then they dwell on that question a lot, and then soon they label that question as a doubt, or they start to see it as a doubt. And then as soon as they do that, it starts to bother them. And it starts to give them anxiety, it starts to frustrate them. And before they know it, shaitan's taken them from one step, from them having a genuine question, all the way to them having now what they call a doubt, which is affecting the iman, right? So don't let that happen. Short circuit that process by understanding, okay, we all have questions about in Islam. We all have questions about, say, for example, the Quran or something in the Quran or in the Sunnah. Make a note, ask someone that knows, you know. And best thing to do is write it down somewhere, because if you don't write it down, it's going to be in your mind. And if it's in your mind, it's more possible that that's going to affect you in other ways. So make a note of it, write it down somewhere, and that's it. It's out of your head now. It's on the paper. And as soon as whenever you can, find the answers to it. Look for the answers. If you can't find the answer yourself, ask someone that knows, inshallah. That's the best way of dealing with questions. But realize that having questions, having things that you don't understand that come up, maybe because someone's asked you a question, maybe because you've read it somewhere, you know, don't let that affect your iman. You know, just realize that we as human beings, we are limited. We don't have answers to every single thing. Even within Islam, we don't understand the whole of Islam. You know, no scholar would ever say that they've understood the entirety of Islam in the proper way. Everyone's on a journey. Everyone is trying to learn and understand. So just categorize things in the right way and deal with questions that you have in the right way. Don't let them turn into doubts that affect your iman. Okay, hopefully that sort of helps, bro. Inshallah. So how is the book coming? I already mentioned this earlier. The book, I've got the second edit back now, which is basically close to the end product now. I just have to go through it once more, add whatever I want to add, take out whatever I want to take out. Then there'll be a final revision of it, and then inshallah I'll be ready to publish. So is the translation Quran in English fully correct? I think what you're asking is, are translations of the Quran in the English language fully correct? It really depends on what you mean by fully correct, Abdurrahman. We need to understand that the Quran is in Arabic. Whenever you translate the Quran, you don't have the Quran, you have the meanings of the Quran. Now, those are your best attempts. They're the best attempts of the scholar or the translator to try to convey the meanings of the Quran. So, and that's how you have to understand it. And therefore, it's very possible that any translation of the Quran may have mistakes in it, right? It's even in the meanings. Now, when it comes to translation of the Quran, I actually spoke to, I remember, it reminded me of the meeting I had with Dr. Sheikh Abdul Halim from SOAS, who actually translated, who's got a translation of the Quran, maybe one of the better, well, definitely one of the better translations of the Quran in the English language today. His translation is published by Oxford Press, the Quran. And I remember him saying, and he made this point very clear, because when I went to meet him, he got a call, and there was someone on the call that was speaking to him about wanting to translate the Quran, right? And I remember Professor Abdul Halim mentioning or to him, because what this person wanted to do was he wanted to do a literal translation of the Quran in the English language. And the professor basically was saying that it's impossible. You can't do this. You can't do a literal translation of the Quran, because you just can't export the Arabic into English perfectly. It's impossible, because both languages have differences, and in the English language just doesn't have the depth and the scope to be able to encapsulate the Quran in translation fully. So he mentioned the best you can do in the English language is try to do a good job of transporting the meanings of the Quran, the meanings of the Arabic Quran into the English language. And that's why I think the good translations of the Quran are those that focus on delivering the meaning of the Quran in English, as opposed to a literal translation. Because if you were to literally translate the Quran, in English you'll end up with a product that doesn't really do justice to the language of the Quran plus the meanings of the Quran. So you'd rather just focus on getting translations which are focused on the meanings of the Quran. And two really good translations in the English language right now, guys, is the one by Professor Abdul Halim, the Quran, and the one by Sheikh Mustafa Khattab, which is the Clear Quran. Those two are brilliant translations of the Quran, inshallah, in the English language. How can someone become a da'i? Anyone can give dawah. Don't focus on becoming a da'i, just focus on giving dawah however you can. First thing I would say is, if you go to training.iro.org, there's a free dawah training course there for you guys. You guys can do that. It's not too long. It'll take you a couple of hours. Once you've done that, you'll be ready to go and convey the message of Islam, inshallah. And then just start giving dawah. Start building that experience. Start sharing with people. Go through the ups and downs of dawah. Learn practically. And inshallah, that's the best way to give dawah. It's just do a course. Training.iro.org is a very good course. And once you've done that, just start giving dawah, inshallah. Okay, all of the secret society questions, inshallah, we'll save. I'll try to get Mohsin. What we'll do is we'll try to do a live stream next week, inshallah, where we address these topics in detail with Mohsin. I don't think he's coming back now. This is relating to the, okay. So let's see if there's any new questions. This is a good question. Bluesy says, what is the best way for someone to free themselves of dopamine addiction, like pornography, especially when someone wants to change but keeps on losing track? This is a very good question. I think it's a good general question as well. Sabur talks about this stuff a lot, but the thing with dopamine is the kick. You may get a dopamine trigger by doing something on one level, but the next time you do it, you're gonna have to push a bit more. You're gonna have to do a bit more of that thing to get the same effect, and then the third time you're gonna have to do more to get the same effect. And social media, guys, is nothing but a dopamine trigger. When we're scrolling, the ways these platforms are designed is just to give you it's designed to keep you on these platforms as long as it can. That's the whole objective behind these platforms. And it really desensitizes you to doing more meaningful things. And this is why, especially today, how hard do we find it to read a book? To sit down and to read a book, it's so difficult. Why is it difficult? I mean, think about it. I struggle with this sometimes. If I don't read for a couple of weeks, when I go back after reading a couple of pages, I just start getting anxiety. You want to go back to doing something which is quick and efficient and takes less effort to give you the same trigger. We're desensitized these days. We're so used to getting everything so rapidly, and we get our trigger through these rapid exchanges where even when you're shopping, it's like prime next day delivery. When you're seeking information, social media, you just want to have it in bite-sized pieces of information, things summarized for you. And when it comes to now doing something, okay, instead of reading a 4 or 5 lines to get this information, reading a book, we don't want to do it. We can't do it. We short-circuited. It's so hard. And the best way to sort of re-collaborate, if you like, your dopamine is to switch off, cut off, go on like they say, go cold turkey. Just stop the social media. It's going to be painful. You're going to get anxiety. You're going to be, itchy and agitated. Just really stop for a couple of days, the social media, if you can. Another thing someone mentioned was do something forcefully, which is really boring, the opposite end of the spectrum. So just stare at a wall for an hour, just stare, or just do nothing for 1 hour. Just sit there quietly and try to relax, and do this. Even if you build this into your day, maybe 15 minutes, do nothing. Put your phone aside, look out the window. Just look out the window, look at the clouds, look at the sky. And when you start doing this, you're going to be really, really agitated initially. But the more you do this, the more easy it's going to become. And then once you do something like this, like staring at a wall for an hour, and then go back to reading a book, you're going to find, okay, well, wow, I can actually read a bit more. Because now reading a book is far more enjoyable and meaningful than staring at a wall, right? But if you go from social media scrolling and getting your dopamine fix in these instant bursts to reading a book, it's very difficult. It's just about, but you can, sort yourself out like this. It just takes a lot of effort. And even with things like pornography and these types of addictions, and it's an addiction. Social media is an addiction. It's what you need to do is you need to, sometimes for some people a gradual process works. For other people a more sort of cold turkey approach works, where you just cut off completely. But start with the belief and understanding that you can overcome these things. It's difficult, it's a challenge, but realize and remind yourself it's meaningful, it's worthwhile. Because all of these things are it's like a drug, basically. It's gonna kill you slowly, and leave you unable to do anything meaningful in life. Because all you're going to be able to do is just get your quick fix. And think about someone that's a drug addict, right? What do they do? What is their life like? They just get their fix and then they're out. And when they come back around, they get their fix and then they're out again. And there's just this perpetual cycle of getting your fix and then you're drugged out, you're lying around, get your fix, drugged out, get your fix, drugged out. That's how social media works. You get your fix, you're fine for a bit, and then you go get your fix again. And it keeps you in this hamster wheel where you're just like running in this wheel and you're doing nothing meaningful as a human being. And to get out of this cycle, you just need to sometimes take an abrupt approach, cut off completely, if that works for you. And for other people, it's more gradual, slowly, cutting off from these things, inshallah. But it's important to do this because otherwise you'll just be wasting time. At the end of your life, you're going to feel like you've done nothing, and that's the last thing you want to feel at the end of your life, that you just wasted it. So, whatever works for you, just realize there's a problem, and realize that, it needs to be fixed, because to do anything meaningful is to escape this type of cycle, and then just get to it, inshallah. And you'll fall, you'll have relapses and stuff, which is fine. It's a part of the process. Just get back up and go again, inshallah. Okay. How do you keep intentions secure when doing dawah? Look, when it comes to our intentions, no one could be certain of the intentions ever in any action. May be more so the case in the dawah, because it's public facing. Best thing to do, just some advice that I find beneficial. Number one, take 5 to 10 minutes before any dawah activity you do. Try to take a couple of minutes, sit with yourself and ask yourself why you're doing it. Just sit down and really think about what you're doing. Because a lot of times we don't do this. We don't stop and think. So really stop and think about what you're about to do, and ask yourself some important questions. Why am I doing this? Is there a need for this? Just ask yourself these key questions. Is there a need for this action that I'm about to do? Why am I doing this? Really try to come to terms with this. And again, you're going to find this difficult initially, because we just don't take time to really contemplate and think these days. It's a very difficult activity to start with, but do that to start with. That will really help with your intention. Secondly, remind yourself, if you do things for your ego, do things to show off, what's that going to come to at the end of the day when you're dead? Nothing. Famous people, celebrities, when they die, people mourn them for a couple of days and they're forgotten, lost in history. No one cares. People move on. So what is it going to mean to get an ego kick or to show off? What's this going to amount to at the end of the day when you're dead? And what will it amount to if your intention was sincere and you were doing it for the right reasons? How would that pay off when you pass away, when you die, when you leave this earth? And then you could really weigh these two scenarios out for yourself and let your reason take course. Let your rational mind decide which one is better for you, to do things for your ego, to do things for the sake of Allah. What's going to pay off for you in the long run, in a way that really matters? So that will really help as well, inshallah. So those are a couple of things that you can do. But key point is, take some time to really think, and then just ask Allah to help you with your intention. And that's it. And then go do the action. Don't not do the action, because that's what Shaitan wants you to do. He wants you not to act. And that's where his success is, if you don't do something good. But if you sit down, think things through, ask Allah to help you, and then go do the action, that's the best you could do as a human being. And then at the end of the action, ask forgiveness from Allah. Ask Allah to forgive you for your intention never slipping up when you were doing the action. And that's it. When you ask Allah for forgiveness, He'll forgive you, and He'll turn your bad deeds into good deeds. And that's, if you do these few things, inshallah, you're safeguarding yourself. Okay. All right, guys. So I think we'll wrap up, inshallah, for today. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. I'll definitely try to do another live with Mohsin next week, inshallah, so we can really do a focused session on all of these topics that he was talking about, inshallah. And yeah, may Allah bless you guys. I'll speak to you guys, inshallah, next week. Assalamu alaikum.